First time I came to Vietnam, it was an eerie experience.
When I left Vietnam, I never dreamed that I would ever be coming back.
Like a lot of Americans, I was torn and went with very mixed feelings back to Vietnam.
There are few places as deeply rooted in the American consciousness as Vietnam. Yet it is a place that continues to elude our attempts at understanding. Today, Vietnam is at a crossroads as its people recover from war and isolation, taking the first steps on a long road back. In every image of this land, there is a haunting memory, a sense that every smile hides an old wound, a wound that never quite healed. In one of the most painful chapters in American history, a tragedy was played on a bloody stage half a world away. Today, Vietnam struggles to emerge from 20 years of isolation, a struggle in which Americans are once again becoming involved.
I'm trying to isolate individual children, which is very difficult because they all want to be in the picture. I find it amazing.
For a Denver photographer, Vietnam is an incredible opportunity.
I'm having a very hard time putting words to what I'm seeing and what I'm feeling right now. All I want to do, I feel like a child in a candy store, you know, it's just insatiable. I just want to shoot film, rolls and rolls and rolls of film.
An American on the streets of Hanoi is still a relatively uncommon sight, but that's changing fast. And they're starting to be seen in places that just a few years ago would have been nearly unthinkable. Every day, thousands of Vietnamese make a pilgrimage to the tomb of the man they call Uncle Ho. Today, some Americans are coming here too.
Of course, we came to Hanoi to see how the other side lives, or how the other side now lives, and we found it very, very interesting.
This is a country with one foot still mired in the past, its economy based primarily on back-breaking chores still performed by hand. Vietnamese officials believe tourism dollars are the way to change that. He says the development of tourism will boost other segments of Vietnam's economy. Already there are changes. Vietnamese television may offer only limited viewing choices, but the world is coming to Vietnam via satellite.
Captain's log, stardate 13.
In Hanoi, what was the language of the enemy is becoming the language of necessity.
Yeah, I can speak English. You want to buy book? This one very good for you.
For 2 decades, this country kept itself sealed off from the West as it practiced Soviet-style communism. But with the failure of policies that kept the economy operating at primitive levels, Vietnam's leaders decided it was time the country was opened for business.
We're working with an American company and their Vietnamese joint venture partner to build the first 4-star resort in the city of Hue. It's a very conducive place to doing business. The people are wonderful, very friendly, encouraging Americans to come here and do business.
The locals sure have this idea that the Americans are just going to walk in and dump money all over the place and they're all going to become wealthy overnight.
When New Zealander Bob Christie opened a restaurant in Da Nang, dealing with the Vietnamese bureaucracy became a nightmare.
You can't get a book and say, this is the rules. In our business, we have to make deals with the tax department over whether we pay anywhere from 5 to 40 or 50%.
Yeah, like any businessman, you get frustrated with dealing with any bureaucracy, but a communist bureaucracy having the power it does is particularly frustrating.
Still, a growing number of Westerners believes Vietnam is the newest frontier.
It's just kind of nice to get to a place that's still exotic, still kind of fun to travel around. There's a little bit of adventure in it.
For Americans, it is difficult to see Vietnam with eyes focused on something other than war, but they are beginning to try.
That visual sense of seeing things new for the first time, that discovery, sort of like a high.
Vietnam is another place on the map. It's had a difficult history.
It is a country trying to put on its best face for the world.
You know, you come here and you see the people, you see how they live, you have the kids come up to you, and you know, kids are universal. They flash the same smile worldwide, they play the same games.
But here, the echoes of war are never very far away.
The Army and the Ministry of Hanoi Capital have caught alive John Sidney, the Air Force Lieutenant of the U.S. Air Force.
John Sidney was aboard one of 10 American planes shot down over Hanoi on the same day. In Vietnam, the unexpected is just about everywhere. We're 50 miles from Hanoi in the northern part of the country. This is a Vietnamese military cemetery, and yet just a few feet away is the resting place of an American airman.
We know an F-4 crashed here in 1967, and there were 2 Americans on the F-4 when it crashed.
This piece right here is a casing from a jet engine. This is very, very high tensile type material, and you can see it's very mangled, which indicates a very high-speed impact.
We're finding small pieces of aircraft wreckage. So far we found 4 small burned bone fragments.
Throughout Vietnam, there are 8 American teams doing this kind of work because there are still around 2,000 American families waiting for some answer about a loved one.
What we're trying to do here is to lift that burden that the families have been carrying around for so many years.
Out here in Southeast Asia, recovering the remains of these Americans, you get a feeling of helping out the families and helping to resolve the issue.
American recovery teams work alongside the Vietnamese at excavation sites. But Vietnam itself is still dealing with its own war casualties. According to General Tran Van Quang, there are 300,000 Vietnamese soldiers still missing in action. Most will never be accounted for. On a fairly regular basis, American remains are being shipped home from Hanoi. Still a source of pain for Americans, but a key to Vietnam's future.
Today I am lifting the trade embargo against Vietnam because I am absolutely convinced it offers the best way to resolve the fate of those who remain missing and about whom we are not sure.
The images of American prisoners of war still provoke enough outrage to make lifting economic sanctions controversial. And the way Vietnam veterans came home doesn't make it any easier. For the men and women who served in the Gulf War, the welcome home was immediate and heartfelt. But for Vietnam veterans, coming home was less an event than a process. And while this parade included a place of honor for them, many Vietnam veterans remember the sting of rejection, and not just American veterans.
Going back to civilian life, you know, we were spat on, and you know, people called us child killers. And you have to remember the World War I veterans, World War II veterans came back as heroes. You know, we came back as, you know, the crap of the earth. I mean, it's a pretty depressing thing for, you know, a 21-year-old.
Once, Australian and American troops came to these beaches for a break from the war. Coming back here was not easy.
It was just, I thought then I'd never come back to the place. But as time goes on, the bad memories fade.
In some cases, the bad memories are being torn down. This was the prison American POWs called the Hanoi Hilton. It's being demolished to make way for a new tourist hotel.
Here's a piece of plexiglass that is very obviously a piece of the canopy.
These guys come out here knowing who they're looking for. They know the circumstances of the loss. In some cases, family members are not receptive to what we're doing, and they don't necessarily believe what we tell them. But in some cases, I can't blame them, because we all know that in some cases family members were misled. They were told things that weren't true.
It has been 20 years since the end of the Vietnam War, but it is increasingly clear that even if we left Vietnam, it never completely left us.
It's time for the United States to get over the war, and as many people have said, it's time to now look at Vietnam as a country, not as a war.
Beneath a mountain made of marble, Vietnamese artists continue a tradition thousands of years old.
I'm making a statue of a Lady Buddha, you know, it's Lady Buddha stand on a dragon.
Today's artists are being sustained by an increasing flow of Western travelers buying their creations, even as Vietnam works to fashion a new image of itself. This is one of the areas Vietnam hopes will be a key to its economic future. The country has thousands of miles of shoreline, unpolluted, undeveloped, and there's virtually no one here, at least not yet.
Now's the time to come see Vietnam before it gets industrialized and gross and smoggy and nasty.
I've had this longing, pull, to see the country, to see the people. I've heard how beautiful it is. And I wanted to see that for myself. And I've been trying to get here, oh, I don't know, 8, 10 years.
People are coming here for a number of reasons, but the urge to return may be strongest in those who left Vietnam 20 years ago.
Well, basically, I left Vietnam when I was 11 years old.
Denver artist Quang Ho is retrieving memories of a family divided for decades.
My dad was a prisoner of war when I was 4.
Quang knows little of his father, but he knows something of his ordeal.
You know, being in prison for basically 10 years, 7 before the fall of Saigon and 3 after.
In the chaos of the fall of Saigon, families were wrenched apart. Many parents got their children out of Vietnam knowing they could not go with.
I just remember going to the airplane and not knowing what the heck was going on, looking back, seeing my mother.
That was the last time Tim and David Bosworth saw their mother, until now.
It's miraculous. Yeah. It's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Waiting for a flight from Paris, the two practice a language that is now foreign to them.
I think it's Chao Ko.
Reunions are beginning to take place from Denver to Vietnam.
When I left Vietnam, I never dreamed that I would ever be coming back.
In Vietnam's ancient imperial capital of Hue, a native son has come home after 20 years.
It's much more crowded than I remember.
In a quiet neighborhood, Quang Ho sits with a stranger who is his father.
When he was captured during the Tet Offensive, we didn't know he was alive or dead. He was taken as a prisoner. By coming back here and reestablishing with my dad, who I really don't even know up to this point, and getting to know him has been very important for me.
For Tim and David Bosworth, a 20-year wait is over.
She's beautiful. She's beautiful. I'm speechless. It was a great sacrifice, what she did, and I'm very thankful, because I wouldn't be here today and I wouldn't have my life here.
This is my nephew. He looks a lot like me.
For Quang Ho, this has been a voyage of discovery.
These basically will be sketches that I will use to make bigger paintings when I get back to Denver. I never get too optimistic until it's a little further along.
Quang's art will now be influenced by his trip back to Vietnam. So will the rest of his life. He's offered to sponsor his father's immigration to the United States.
And he's very enthusiastically said yes. And in fact, he has all of the paperwork done on his end already for years now.
Vietnam has long been a country of close-knit families, and there are ties that even war and separation have not been able to break. It is a Saturday morning, another school day for children in Vietnam. But this school is different than most because of a Colorado agency. Here there are 2 special classrooms for children with hearing problems. Classrooms funded by the Southeast Asia Children's Project.
Well, what we're trying to do is we give them, they don't have enough facility for school, and Southeast Asia Children's Project will sponsor and funding for them for the supply for a whole year.
Vietnam's a very poor country. If you look at the Asian countries, it's among the poorest.
Vietnam has a very rich culture dating back thousands of years, but its long history has been plagued by warfare. Now, 20 years after its most recent war, Vietnam looks to move from the problems of the past to the promise of the future.
Say hello, 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 hello.
Vietnam's future is its children, but with one of the fastest growing populations in the world, the number of orphans and abandoned children is growing too.
There just are not the means to take care of some of these children who have been abandoned or their parents have been injured, and for whatever reason, they have no means of support.
This orphanage is funded by the Southeast Asia Children's Project, based in Denver.
Primarily, this is a care facility. We're trying to create an environment where the children basically would have a good life.
But for many children, the good life means leaving Vietnam for places like Colorado.
Is that him? It must be him. Is that him? Is this him? Wow. Is this him? Yes!
The Vietnamese government itself is very responsive to adoption and very receptive. They seem very eager to have their children find good homes.
Here's your new mom. Hi, Stefan. Hi. Oh, we are so happy to have you as part of our family.
Patience and flexibility are the things that, we ask of families, and a desire to incorporate a child from another culture into their family and to learn more about that child's culture too.
But adoption is not the answer for every child, and not everyone believes it should be.
While an adoption is available, the function has been to give the children a good life in Vietnam. You can't get an education if you're having to beg to get your daily meals in the street. So the first thing is give them enough care so they can be children. Don't rob them of their childhood. I think our hope is that we can do something about the next generation, and that they will see, to me, the hope of working with Americans for a more open country as well as a more prosperous country.
The rush to prosperity is placing Vietnam and its people in the midst of a difficult transition.
It's obvious that there's an increasing openness to all things foreign, if we can put it that way. The society that was closed for so long and didn't seem to have a lot of interplay with Western influence has really opened up quite a bit.
Not long ago, you could walk the streets of most Vietnamese cities and not come across a single electronic device.
Now you can't go more than 2 blocks in any one direction without a shop being stacked high with television sets or cassette players or CD players.
Already there are concerns that Vietnam may be losing as much as it gains.
It'll be more westernized, I believe, We'll see more of our culture meeting the Vietnamese culture, perhaps some of that Vietnamese culture lost.
For now, this is still very much part of the old world, something that has both its drawbacks and its appeal.
I can walk out of the door, set up my easel, turn around 5 times and do 5 paintings. It's that beautiful, it's that real, you know, everywhere you go, it's the drama of life played out right in front of you everywhere.
The drama of life has been a constant theme in Vietnam, played and replayed over thousands of years. And no matter what the future brings for this country and its people, there seems to be no turning back on a road that promises to be as difficult as it is long.